The fluorescent lights of Megamart cast harsh shadows across Maya Chen's gaunt face as she clutched the crumpled $5 bill in her trembling hand. At 19, she looked younger. Hunger had a way of stealing years from a person's appearance, leaving behind hollow cheeks and eyes that seemed too large for her face. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as she made her way down the dairy aisle, each step a calculated decision between pride and desperation. The milk section stretched before her like a cruel joke. Gallon after gallon of fresh, cold milk lined the refrigerated shelves, their prices displayed in bold red numbers that might as well have been written in a foreign language. $4.99, $5.49, $6.29 for the organic brands. Maya's fingers tightened around her $5 money she'd earned by returning aluminum cans she'd collected from dumpsters behind restaurants. Behind her, a soft whimper echoed from the baby carrier strapped to her chest. 6-month-old Emma stirred restlessly, her tiny fists clenched against the pink blanket that had seen better days. The blanket was one of the few things Maya had managed to keep from their old life, back when her parents were alive, back when food was never a question, only a given. "She, sweetheart," Maya whispered, adjusting the carrier with practiced ease. "Mommy's going to figure this out." But how? The formula Emma needed cost more than Maya made in 3 days of odd jobs. The WIC vouchers wouldn't come through for another week, and Emma was down to her last bottle. Maya had tried everything diluting the formula to make it last longer, even attempting to breastfeed, though her malnourished body had stopped producing milk weeks ago. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes pushed her cart past Maya, her basket filled with groceries that probably cost more than Maya's weekly income. The woman glanced at Maya, then at baby Emma, and her expression softened with recognition, the look people got when they saw someone truly struggling. "Excuse me, dear," the woman said, her voice gentle but hesitant. Are you doing all right?" Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She'd become skilled at reading people's expressions, at recognizing pity when she saw it. Part of her wanted to lie, to maintain what little dignity she had left. But Emma made another small sound, and Maya's resolve crumbled. "I'm trying to buy milk for my baby," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I'm a little short." The woman's eyes filled with concern. "How much do you need?" "Just a small carton, the cheapest one." Maya pointed to a quart of whole milk priced at $2.79. "I have $5, but after I buy this, I won't have enough for other things." The unspoken truth hung between them. Other things meant food for herself, meant keeping the electricity on in the cramped studio apartment she shared with 3 other people, meant the bus fare to get to her part-time job cleaning offices at night. "Let me help you," the elderly woman said, reaching for her purse. "No," the word came out sharper than Maya intended. "I'm sorry, but no, I can't. I don't take charity." It was a lie, of course. Maya had been forced to swallow her pride countless times over the past 6 months, since her parents died in the car accident, since she'd aged out of foster care with a baby to support and no family to turn to. But something about this woman's kindness made her want to pretend, just for a moment, that she was still the college-bound girl she'd once been. Woman nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. "Of course, dear, I understand." Maya watched her walk away, then turned back to the milk display. She reached for the cheapest option, a store-brand quart that looked like it had been sitting there for days. As she lifted it from the shelf, she noticed a man watching her from the end of the aisle. He was tall, probably in his 40s, with dark hair that was perfectly styled despite the late hour. His clothes screamed money, a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months, leather shoes that gleamed under the store lights, and a watch that caught the fluorescent glare with every movement of his wrist. But it was his eyes that made Maya uncomfortable. They were sharp, calculating, taking in every detail of her appearance with an intensity that made her want to disappear. Maya clutched the milk tighter and hurried toward the checkout lanes, Emma bouncing gently against her chest with each quick step. She chose the shortest line, behind a teenager buying energy drinks and a woman with a full cart of frozen dinners. As she waited, Maya caught sight of herself in the security monitor mounted above the register. She barely recognized the girl staring back at her. 6 months ago, she'd been preparing for her senior year of high school, planning for college, dreaming of becoming a teacher. Now she looked exactly what she was, a teenage mother struggling to survive, wearing the same jeans she'd worn for 3 days straight and a sweater with holes in the elbows. "Next," called the cashier, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read, Denise. Maya stepped forward and placed the milk on the conveyor belt with shaking hands. The barcode scanner beeped, and the price flashed on the screen. $2.79. That'll be $2.97 with tax, Denise said. Not looking up from her register, Maya's heart stopped. Tax. She'd forgotten about tax. She stared at the screen, then at the $5 bill in her hand, then back at the screen. $2.97. She had $5. She could afford it. But that left her with $2.03 for everything else: food, transportation, the countless other necessities that seemed to multiply when you had nothing. "Miss," Denise looked up, finally making eye contact. "That's $2.97. Behind Maya, the line was growing longer. She could feel the impatience radiating from the customers waiting behind her, could hear the soft sighs and shifting feet that meant people were getting annoyed. Maya's voice caught in her throat. "I'm sorry, I thought it was $2.79. Tax brings it to $2.97. Denise repeated, her tone growing slightly irritated. Maya looked down at Emma, who had fallen asleep against her chest, completely unaware that her next meal hung in the balance of 97 cents. The baby's face was peaceful, trusting, and Maya felt something break inside her chest. "Please," Maya whispered, her voice so quiet that Denise had to lean forward to hear her. Is there any way you could help me? It's for my baby. She needs milk, and I'm just a little short. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories." Denise's expression softened slightly, but she shook her head. "I'm sorry, honey, but I can't just change the price. The register logs everything, and my manager. Is there a problem here?" The voice came from directly behind Maya, smooth and authoritative. She turned to see the well-dressed man she'd noticed in the dairy aisle, now standing in line behind her. Up close, he was even more intimidating, tall enough that she had to crane her neck to look at his face, with sharp features and eyes the color of storm clouds. "No problem," Maya said quickly, stepping aside. I'll come back later." But as she moved to leave, the man stepped forward, placing a hand on the counter. "Wait," he said, his voice carrying a quiet command that made both Maya and Denise freeze. "What's the total?" $2.97. Denise answered automatically. The man pulled out a black credit card and placed it on the counter. "Add it to my purchase." Maya stared at him in shock. "No, I can't let you. It's already done," he said, cutting her off. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, Maya saw something flicker in their depths, not pity, but something else. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. Denise looked between them uncertainly. "Sir, are you sure?" "I'm sure." He handed her the card. "Ring it up." Maya felt tears threatening to spill over. "Thank you," she managed to say. "I'll pay you back. I promise. If you give me your information, that won't be necessary." The man's tone was final. "Just take care of your baby." As Denise processed the transaction, Maya studied the stranger's face. There was something familiar about him, though she was certain they'd never met. Maybe it was just his bearing, the way he carried himself, like someone accustomed to being in charge, to having his decisions respected without question. "Here you go, dear," Denise said, handing Maya the milk in a plastic bag. "And sir, I'll need to see some ID for the credit card." The man reached into his wallet and produced a driver's license. Denise glanced at it, then did a double take. Her eyes widened as she looked from the license to the man's face and back again. Mr. Harrison?" she stammered. "James Harrison?" "That's correct," he said calmly. Maya saw Denise's hands begin to shake slightly as she processed the card. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Harrison. I didn't recognize you at first. Thank you so much for shopping with us." The name meant nothing to Maya, but clearly it meant something to Denise. And to the bag boy who had overheard and was now staring with his mouth slightly open. And to the customer behind them in line, who had pulled out her phone and was discreetly trying to take a picture. James Harrison, whoever he was, seemed oblivious to the stir he was creating. He signed the receipt with a quick scrawl and pocketed his card. "Thank you again," Maya said as they walked away from the register together. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't owe me anything," he replied. "But if you don't mind me asking, are you here alone?" The question sent a chill down Maya's spine. She'd learned to be wary of men who showed too much interest in her situation, especially when she was vulnerable. But something in his tone suggested concern rather than predatory interest. "My baby and I are fine," she said carefully. They had reached the store's exit, and Harrison paused under the bright lights of the vestibule. "I'm sure you are," he said. "But that was a very small amount of milk for a baby. How often are you able to buy formulas?" The question was direct, cutting through any pretense. Maya felt her defenses rising. "We manage. I'm sure you do." His eyes flicked to Emma, still sleeping peacefully in her carrier. But managing and thriving are two different things. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. It was from her landlord. "Rent due tomorrow or eviction proceedings begin. No more extensions." Harrison must have seen her expression change because his voice softened. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" Maya looked up at him, the stranger who had just bought milk for her baby, who was asking questions that suggested he might actually care about the answers. For a moment, she was tempted to tell him everything about the eviction notice, about her parents' death, about the mountain of medical bills that had swallowed their life insurance money, about the part-time jobs that barely covered Emma's basic needs. Instead, she hugged the milk closer to her chest. "I should go. Thank you again for your kindness." She turned to leave, but Harrison's voice stopped her. "Maya!" She spun around, her heart racing. "How do you know my name?" A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Your name tag," he said. Pointing to her chest, Maya looked down and saw the faded tag from her cleaning job still pinned to her sweater. Maya, night cleaning crew. She'd forgotten she was wearing it. "Right," she said, feeling foolish. "Of course, Maya," he said again, and this time her name sounded different coming from his lips. Thoughtful. "I have a proposition for you." Every warning bell in Maya's head started ringing. "What kind of proposition?" "A job," he said simply. "Something that would pay considerably more than night cleaning. Something that would allow you to provide better for your daughter." Maya's grip tightened on the milk. "What kind of job?" "Come to this address tomorrow at 10 a.m., Harrison said, pulling a business card from his jacket pocket. "We can discuss it then." Maya took the card with trembling fingers. The paper was thick, expensive, with raised lettering that read, "James Harrison, CEO, Harrison Industries." Below that was an address in the financial district, the kind of place Maya had only seen in movies. "CEO," she whispered, looking up at him with new understanding. No wonder Denise had recognized him. No wonder people were staring. "You're the CEO of Harrison Industries." "I am," he confirmed. Maya had heard of Harrison Industries, everyone had. It was one of the largest corporations in the state, with interests in everything from real estate to technology. Their logo was on half the buildings downtown. "Why would you want to give me a job?" she asked. "Let's just say I believe in second chances," Harrison replied. "And sometimes, the most unlikely people turn out to be exactly what you need." A gust of wind blew through the automatic doors, and Maya shivered. She looked down at the business card, then backed up at Harrison. "What? If this is some kind of scam? What if you're not really who you say you are? Then you'll have wasted an hour of your time," he said. "But if I am who I say I am, and if the job is legitimate, then you'll have changed your life." Maya studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. But his expression was steady, sincere, and something in his eyes reminded her of her father, the way he used to look at her when he was trying to convince her to take a chance on something new. 10 a.m., she said finally. 10 a.m., he confirmed. "Ask for me at the front desk." As Maya walked away, clutching the milk and the business card, she felt a strange mixture of hope and terror churning in her stomach. She'd learned not to trust good fortune in her experience. When something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. But as she boarded the bus that would take her back to the overcrowded apartment where Emma's formula was running dangerously low, Maya allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, what it might be like to have enough. Enough money for food, for rent, for Emma's needs. Enough security to sleep through the night without worrying about tomorrow. The bus lurched into motion, and Maya watched the lights of Megamart disappear behind her. Tomorrow she would find out if James Harrison was her salvation or just another disappointment in a long line of broken promises. But tonight, she had milk for her baby, and sometimes that had to be enough. Maya stood on the sidewalk outside the Harrison Industries building, craning her neck to see the top of the 50-story glass tower that stretched into the cloudy morning sky. People in expensive suits hurried past her, their heels clicking against the concrete with the rhythm of success and purpose. Maya felt painfully out of place in her cleanest jeans and a borrowed blazer that hung loose on her thin frame. Gurgled softly in her carrier, reaching tiny fingers toward the reflective surface of the building. Maya had fed her the last of the milk that morning, mixed with water to stretch it further. The business card in her hand was slightly crumpled from being gripped too tightly during the sleepless night. "Excuse me," Maya said to the security guard. At the information desk, her voice barely audible above the echo of footsteps in the marble lobby. "I have an appointment with Mr. Harrison." The guard, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, looked her up and down with barely concealed surprise. "Mr. James Harrison?" "Yes, sir, at 10 a.m. The guard consulted his computer screen, scrolling through what appeared to be a long list of appointments. His expression grew puzzled. "I don't see anything here for a ... He paused, waiting for her. "Name, Maya Chen." More rolling, more puzzled looks. "Miss, are you sure you have an appointment with Mr. Harrison? His assistant usually schedules everything through corporate channels." "And please," Maya interrupted, her voice cracking slightly. "He gave me this card yesterday and told me to come at 10. She held up the business card as evidence. Guard's expression softened when he noticed Emma. "Hold on, let me call upstairs." Maya stepped aside as the guard picked up his phone, speaking in low tones to someone on the other end. She watched through the floor-to-ceiling windows as more suited professionals streamed into the building, all of them looking like they belonged. "In this world of marble and mahogany, Miss Chen?" The guard hung up the phone, looking surprised. "Mr. Harrison's assistant says to send you right up. 49th floor, elevator bank C." The elevator ride felt endless. Maya watched the numbers climb 15, 25, 35 each floor, representing a level of success she'd never imagined reaching. Emma seemed fascinated by the smooth motion, her dark eyes wide with curiosity. When the doors opened on the 49th floor, Maya stepped into a world that seemed designed to intimidate. The reception area was larger than most apartments, with leather furniture arranged around a massive desk where a perfectly groomed woman in her 30s sat typing on a computer. "Maya Chen?" the woman asked, looking up with the kind of professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, Mr. Harrison's executive assistant. He's waiting for you in his office." Maya followed Jennifer down a hallway lined with oil paintings and awards, her footsteps muffled by thick carpet. Other employees they passed looked at her with curious glances, clearly wondering what someone like her was doing on the executive floor. "Mr. Harrison," Jennifer said, knocking on a set of double doors at the end of the hall. "Miss Chen is here." "Send her in," came the familiar voice from inside. Jennifer opened the doors, and Maya stepped into an office that was larger than any space she'd ever been in. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city and the morning sunlight. Streamed across a desk that looked like it belonged in a museum. James Harrison stood behind that desk, and seeing him in his natural environment made Maya realize just how powerful he truly was. Yesterday, in the grocery store, he'd seemed like a well-dressed businessman. Here, surrounded by the trappings of enormous wealth and influence, he looked like exactly what he was, the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation. "Maya," he said, coming around the desk with his hand extended. "Thank you for coming." She shook his hand, acutely aware of how soft his skin was compared to her own work-roughened palms. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Harrison. I still can't quite believe this is real." "Please, sit," he said, gesturing to a pair of leather chairs arranged near the windows. "And call me James." Maya settled into the chair, adjusting Emma's carrier so the baby could look around the vast office. "This is incredible," she said, gesturing toward the view. "I've never seen the city from this high up. It's easy to forget how beautiful it is when you see it every day," James replied, taking the chair across from her. "How did you sleep last night?" The question was casual, but Maya sensed he was genuinely interested in the answer. "Not very well, to be honest. I kept thinking this might be some kind of elaborate prank. And now?" Maya looked around the office again, taking in the diplomas on the walls, the awards, the framed photographs showing James with politicians and celebrities. "Now I'm wondering why someone like you would want to help someone like me." James leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "What do you know about Harrison Industries?" "Not much," Maya admitted. "I know you're successful. I know your name is on buildings all over the city." "We started as a construction company," James said. "My grandfather built it from nothing after he immigrated here in the 1940s. He used to tell me that America gave him a chance when no one else would, and that it was our responsibility to pass that opportunity along." Maya shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Harrison James, I appreciate what you did last night, but I'm not looking for charity." "Good," he said firmly, "because I'm not offering any." Emma made a soft cooing sound, and James's expression softened as he looked at the baby. "She's beautiful. How old?" 6 months, Maya said, her voice warm with pride despite everything. "Her name is Emma." "Emma," James repeated, and Maya noticed his hand flex slightly, as if he wanted to reach out to the baby but was restraining himself. "Is her father in the picture?" The question stung, even though Maya had expected it. "No. He left when he found out I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be a father." "I'm sorry," James said, and Maya could hear genuine sympathy in his voice. "It's probably for the best," Maya replied, more to convince herself than him. "Emma and I are doing fine on our own." "Are you?" The question was gentle but direct. "Maya, I saw you last night. I saw how you looked when you realized you couldn't afford the milk." "That's not doing fine." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "We have our struggles, but..." "What happened to your parents?" The sudden change of subject caught Maya off guard. "How did you mentioned them yesterday, in past tense. And you're clearly too young to be entirely on your own by choice." Maya looked down at Emma, who had fallen asleep against her chest. The story of her parents' death wasn't something she shared easily, but something about James's direct, honest approach made her want to answer. "A car accident 6 months ago," she said quietly. "A drunk driver ran a red light. They died instantly." James was quiet for a long moment. "I'm very sorry for your loss." "They had life insurance, but—" Maya's voice trailed off. "But it wasn't enough to cover everything," James finished. Maya nodded. Medical bills, funeral costs, legal fees. By the time everything was settled, there was barely enough left to cover Emma's birth. "I aged out of foster care right around the same time, so I couldn't go back into the system. And you've been surviving on part-time work ever since." "I'm not looking for pity," Maya said quickly. "I just want to provide for my daughter." James stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "What did you want to be when you grew up?" "A teacher," Maya answered without hesitation. "Elementary school. I was supposed to start college this fall before." She gestured vaguely, encompassing the entirety of her changed circumstances. "What subjects?" "Education, with a focus on early childhood development. I wanted to work with kids who come from difficult backgrounds, kids who need someone to believe in them." James turned back to face her, and Maya was surprised to see something almost like admiration in his expression. "That's exactly what I thought you'd say." "What do you mean?" "Maya, I didn't meet you by accident last night. I've been watching you for several weeks." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She clutched Emma closer, her heart racing. "What do you mean, watching me?" "Not stalking," James said quickly, seeming to realize how his words had sounded. "But I've been aware of your situation. You clean the Harrison Industries building 3 nights a week, don't you?" Maya nodded slowly. "Floors 12 through 15. I work late most nights. I've seen you there, with Emma in her carrier, doing your job with more care and attention than employees making 10 times your salary. I've watched you help other cleaning staff who were struggling with their assignments. I've seen you organize supply closets that weren't your responsibility because you noticed they were disorganized." Maya stared at him in confusion. "I don't understand." "Why would you notice things like that?" "Because I'm always looking for people who do the right thing when no one is watching," James said. "People with integrity, with work ethic, with the kind of character that can't be taught." He returned to his chair, leaning forward slightly. "Maya, I want to offer you a position here at Harrison Industries. Not cleaning something that would. Use your intelligence and your natural instincts about people." Maya's mouth went dry. "What kind of position?" "Assistant to our Director of Community Outreach. We run dozens of programs for at-risk families, scholarship funds, and job training initiatives. We need someone who understands what it's like to struggle, someone who can connect with the people we're trying to help." The offer was so far beyond what Maya had expected that she couldn't process it. "I don't have any experience with that kind of work." "You have the most important qualification," James said. "You've lived it, and you can learn the rest." "What would it cost?" Maya asked, hardly daring to hope. $45,000 to start, with full benefits including health insurance and child care assistance. There's a daycare facility in this building for employees' children. Maya felt dizzy. $45,000 was more money than she'd ever imagined having. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" James was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "Because 15 years ago, I was in a grocery store late at night, and I couldn't afford to buy food for my sick daughter. A stranger helped me that night, and I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I would pass that kindness along." The admission hung in the air between them, and Maya saw something vulnerable in James's expression that hadn't been there before. "What happened to your daughter?" Maya asked softly. Pain flickered across James's features. "She died, leukemia. She was 7 years old. I'm so sorry," Maya breathed. "Her name was Emma," James said quietly. And suddenly Maya understood why he'd reacted so strongly to her daughter's name. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of shared loss creating an unexpected connection between them. Finally, James spoke again. "This isn't charity, Maya. This is business. I believe you can do this job, and I believe you can do it well. But the choice is entirely yours." Maya looked down at her sleeping daughter, then out at the city spread below them. Somewhere out there was the cramped apartment where she'd left her few possessions. The landlord who was expecting rent she didn't have. The endless cycle of worry and struggle that had become her life. When would I start? She asked. A smile spread across James's face, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "How about Monday? The tension is building." If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. 3 months later, Maya stood in her new apartment's kitchen, preparing Emma's bottle with fresh name-brand formula. The morning sunlight streamed through clean windows, illuminating a space that was modest but entirely theirs. No roommates, no shared bathroom, no fear of eviction notices. Emma, now 9 months old and thriving, sat in her high chair, babbling happily as she played with soft blocks. Her cheeks had filled out, her hair had grown thick and lustrous, and her laugh came easily and often. The transformation was remarkable, but not as remarkable as Maya's own. Maya caught her reflection in the kitchen window and barely recognized the woman looking back at her. 3 months of regular meals had returned some color to her complexion, and the constant stress lines around her eyes had begun to fade. She wore a navy dress suit, one of several she'd purchased with her first paycheck, and her hair was pulled back in a professional style that made her look older, more confident. The job at Harrison Industries had been challenging in ways Maya hadn't expected. Learning the complex web of social programs, understanding grant applications and community partnerships, navigating corporate bureaucracy, it had all felt overwhelming at first. But James had been right about her instincts. When Maya spoke with struggling families, they opened up to her in ways they never did with other staff members. They recognized something in her eyes, the understanding that came from having walked in their shoes. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. "Board meeting at 9. Need your input on the new scholarship program." Maya smiled as she typed back, "On my way up." The ease of their professional relationship still surprised her. After that first day, in his office, James had maintained strict boundaries, treating her exactly as he would any other employee. Their interactions were professional, respectful, and focused entirely on work. Maya had worried that her presence might be a constant reminder of his lost daughter, but if it was, he never showed it. "Good morning, beautiful girl," Maya said to Emma as she lifted her from the high chair. "Ready to go see Ms. Rodriguez?" Emma clapped her hands excitedly. Carmen Rodriguez ran the employee daycare facility on the 6th floor of the Harrison building, and Emma adored her. The daycare was a revelation to Maya, bright, clean, staffed with trained professionals who treated the children with genuine affection. Emma had thrived there, hitting all her developmental milestones ahead of schedule. The commute from Maya's apartment to the Harrison building took exactly 12 minutes by subway, a far cry from the hour-long bus rides she used to endure. As the elevator carried them up to the 6th floor, Emma pressed her face against the mirrored wall, giggling at her own reflection. "Buenos dias, mi amor," Carmen called out as they entered the daycare center. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of warm, maternal presence that made children feel instantly safe. "How's our little princess today?" Emma reached eagerly for Carmen, and Maya felt the familiar pang of gratitude that her daughter had someone so loving to care for her during the day. "She had a good night," Maya reported. "No fever and she ate all her breakfast. Perfect. We're going to have a wonderful day, aren't we, Emma?" Carmen bounced the baby gently, earning a delighted squeal. Maya kissed Emma's forehead and headed for the elevator that would take her to the 49th floor. The morning routine had become so natural that she sometimes forgot how miraculous it still felt to her, having a job she was good at, a safe place for Emma, enough money for all their needs. The community outreach department occupied half of the 32nd floor, and Maya's desk sat near the windows with a view of the park where she and Emma sometimes went for walks on weekend afternoons. Her supervisor, Dr. Patricia Williams, was already at her computer when Maya arrived. "Good morning, Maya," Dr. Williams said, looking up from a stack of grant applications. "Ready for the board presentation?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Maya replied. Settling at her desk and opening the file containing her research on the proposed scholarship program. Over the past month, Maya had been working on an initiative to provide college scholarships specifically for young parents who had aged out of the foster care system. It was a demographic that fell through the cracks of most existing programs, and Maya's personal experience had given her unique insights into the challenges they faced. "Your recommendations are excellent," Dr. Williams continued. "James was impressed with your analysis of the pilot program results." Maya felt a flush of pride. The pilot program had been her idea, a small-scale test run with 5 scholarship recipients. All 5 had successfully completed their first semester of college, maintaining GPAs above 3.0 while caring for their children. The success rate was unprecedented for their demographic. At 8:45, Maya gathered her materials and headed for the boardroom on the 49th floor. The monthly board meetings were intimidating affairs, attended by some of the most powerful business leaders in the state. Maya had been presenting to the board for 2 months now, but she still felt nervous as she entered the elegant conference room with its massive oak table and leather chairs. James was already there, reviewing documents with several other executives. He looked up as Maya entered, giving her a brief nod of acknowledgement that somehow managed to convey both professionalism and encouragement. "Good morning, Maya," he said as she took her seat at the presentation end of the table. "The board is very interested in hearing about the scholarship program expansion." Over the next few minutes, the remaining board members filled in a mix of Harrison Industries executives and external advisors who brought expertise in various fields. Maya recognized most of them from previous meetings, but she still felt like an outsider in their world of inherited wealth and Ivy League degrees. "Ladies and gentlemen," James said once everyone was seated, "as you know, Chen has been leading our initiative to provide educational opportunities for young parents transitioning out of foster care. Maya, the floor is yours." Maya stood, activated the presentation screen, and began to speak. The nervousness that had plagued her during her first few presentations had largely disappeared, replaced by genuine passion for the work. "3 months ago, we launched a pilot program providing full scholarships to 5 young parents who had aged out of the foster care system," she began. "Today, I'm here to share the results and propose a significant expansion of the program." She clicked to the first slide, which showed photographs of the 5 scholarship recipients with their children. These 5 individuals were selected from over 200 applications. All of them had been in foster care until age 18. All of them became parents shortly after aging out of the system. And all of them had been unable to pursue higher education due to financial constraints. Maya moved through the slides, sharing statistics about their academic performance, their employment outcomes, and the measurable improvements in their children's development. But it was when she began sharing the personal stories that the room became truly engaged. Sarah Martinez had been sleeping in her car with her infant son when she applied for our program. Maya said, clicking a photo of a young woman in graduation. Cap and gown. She finished her first semester with a 3.8 GPA while working part-time and caring for her child. She's now on track to become a registered nurse. Maya noticed several board members leaning forward, truly listening rather than just Being politely attentive. The success of this pilot program demonstrates something we've long suspected, that young parents from disadvantaged backgrounds often possess extraordinary motivation and resilience. They just need someone to give them a chance. She clicked to her final slide, which outlined the proposed expansion. We're recommending that Harrison Industries commit to funding 50 scholarships per year for the next 5 years. The total investment would be $2.8 million annually, but the projected return, both in terms of social impact and positive publicity for Harrison Industries, far exceeds the cost. Maya paused, scanning the faces around the table. Several board members were taking notes, and she could see genuine interest in their expressions. The expansion would include not just tuition assistance, but also childcare support, textbook allowances, and mentorship programs connecting our scholarship recipients with Harrison Industries employees who can provide guidance and networking opportunities. An older woman at the far end of the table, Margaret Silverton, Maya had learned, who served on the boards of several major charities, raised her hand. "Miss Chen, this is impressive work. But I have to ask, what's your personal connection to this population? Your insights seem remarkable. Specific." Maya felt her pulse quicken. She had known this question would come eventually, but it still made her stomach clench with anxiety. She glanced briefly at James, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. "I aged out of foster care at 18, Maya said quietly. "I became a mother at 19. Until 3 months ago, I was working multiple minimum wage jobs and struggling to provide basic necessities for my daughter." The silence in the room was profound. Maya could hear the distant hum of traffic from the street below, the soft whisper of the air conditioning, the rustle of papers as someone shifted in their chair. "I understand this demographic because I am this demographic," Maya continued, her voice growing stronger. "I know what it feels like to stand in a grocery store and count coins to buy milk for your baby. I know the desperation of choosing between paying rent and buying formulas. I know the way people look at you when you're young and struggling and carrying a child like you're a problem to be solved rather than a person with potential." Margaret Silverton was nodding slowly. "And now you're here, proposing programs to help others in the same situation." "Because someone gave me a chance," Maya said, looking directly at James. "Someone saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. This scholarship program isn't charity. It's an investment in people who are motivated to succeed because they have everything to lose and everything to gain." Another board member, a man in his 60s with silver hair, leaned forward. "The financial projections are solid, but what about the intangible benefits? How do we measure success beyond graduation rates?" Maya smiled, knowing she was on solid ground here. "We track multiple metrics over a 5-year period. Employment rates, wage growth, homeownership, their children's academic performance, and what we call cycle breaking, whether they're able to provide their children with opportunities they never had." She clicked to a backup slide she had prepared. "Our pilot program participants have already shown remarkable progress. Not one of them has returned to government assistance. All 5 are employed or in school full-time. Their children have higher vaccination rates, better nutrition, and more stable housing than before the program began." "And the cost-benefit analysis?" asked another member. "Every dollar invested in this program saves an estimated $4 in long-term social services costs," Maya replied. "But more importantly, it breaks generational cycles of poverty and creates productive, tax-paying citizens who contribute to their communities." James stood up, signaling that the presentation was entering its final phase. "The board needs to vote on whether to approve the expanded scholarship program. Maya has provided comprehensive research supporting the initiative, and I believe it aligns perfectly with Harrison Industries' commitment to community investment." Margaret Silverton was the first to speak. I motion to approve the program as presented. Seconded, said the silver-haired man. The vote was unanimous. As the board members filed out of the conference room, many of them stopped to congratulate Maya on her presentation. Margaret Silverton was the last to leave, and she paused beside Maya's chair. That took courage, she said quietly. Sharing your story like that. Most people in your position would have tried to hide their background. Hiding it would make me less effective at my job, Maya replied. These families need advocates who understand their reality. Margaret smiled. You're going to go far in this business, Miss Chen. I hope you'll consider joining the board of my foundation someday. We could use someone with your perspective. After the room emptied, Maya found herself alone with James. She began gathering her presentation materials, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline of public speaking. You did exceptionally well, James said, loosening his tie slightly. I knew you had the skills for this job, but watching you command that room, you're a natural leader, Maya. Thank you, she said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. I couldn't have done any of this without the opportunity you gave me. James was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Maya, can I ask you something personal? She nodded, curious about the change in his tone. Are you happy here? I mean, truly happy? Not just grateful for the job, but actually fulfilled by the work? The question surprised her. Yes, she said without hesitation. This is the first time in my life I felt like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Why do you ask? Because I have another proposition for you, James said, his expression serious. Dr. Williams is retiring next year, and I'd like you to consider taking over as Director of Community Outreach. Maya stared at him in shock, but I've only been here 3 months. I don't have the experience. You have something more valuable than experience, James interrupted. You have authenticity and insight that can't be taught. The communities we serve trust you in ways they'll never trust someone with an MBA and no real-world experience of struggle. What would that mean? Exactly, it would mean overseeing a department budget of $12 million annually. It would mean designing and implementing programs that affect thousands of families. It would mean representing Harrison Industries at conferences, speaking engagements, and policy meetings. Maya felt dizzy at the scope of what he was describing. James, I'm not qualified for something like that. Let me worry about your qualifications, he said firmly. The question is whether you're interested, whether you're willing to take on that level of responsibility. Maya looked out the conference room windows at the city spread below them. Somewhere out there where families like hers had been struggling, desperate, needing someone to believe in them. The idea of being able to help on such a massive scale was both thrilling and terrifying. What would it cost? She asked, then immediately felt embarrassed for asking such a direct question. James smiled. $95,000 to start, plus performance bonuses that could bring it to well over 6 figures. Full executive benefits, including a company car and enhanced childcare support. The numbers were so far beyond Maya's experience that they seemed abstract, like play money from a board game. She thought about Emma downstairs in the daycare, about the small apartment that had felt like a palace compared to their previous living situation, about the security of knowing that tomorrow's meal was guaranteed. I need time to think about it, she said finally. Of course, take all the time you need. James gathered his own materials and headed for the door. But Maya, don't underestimate yourself. You've already accomplished more in 3 months than most people do in 3 years. As Maya rode the elevator down to collect Emma from daycare, her mind raced with possibilities. 6 months ago, she had been begging for coins to buy milk. Now she was being offered a position that would make her one of the youngest department heads in the company's history. But as exciting as the opportunity was, something else occupied her thoughts as the elevator descended. The way James had looked at her during the board meeting, the pride in his voice when he'd introduced her presentation, The personal nature of his question about her happiness. There had been something in his manner that suggested more than professional interest. Maya shook her head, pushing the thought away. James Harrison was her boss, her mentor, and the man who had saved her life when she needed it most. Reading anything romantic into his behavior would be not only inappropriate, but potentially disastrous for her career. Still, as she entered the daycare and saw Emma's face light up at the sight of her, Maya couldn't help but think about the strange turns her life had taken. 3 months ago, she had been a desperate teenager with no future. Now she was being offered opportunities she'd never dreamed possible. And at the center of it all was James Harrison, a man with his own secrets, his own pain, and his own reasons for wanting to help a stranger in a grocery store. 2 weeks after the board meeting, Maya was working late in her office when she heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. James often stayed late, and over the past few months, Maya had grown accustomed to the rhythm of his evening routine. The sound of his office door closing, the elevator carrying him to the parking garage, the building settling into silence. Tonight, however, the footsteps stopped outside her office. Burning the midnight oil? James asked from her doorway. Maya looked up from the grant application spread across her desk. It was past 8 o'clock, and the office floor was empty except for the two of them, just finishing up the Martinez family assessment. They're perfect candidates for the housing assistance program. James entered her office, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the executive break room. You've been staying late every night this week. Don't you think Emma might miss her mother? She's with Mrs. Patterson downstairs, Maya said, accepting the coffee gratefully. She loves the evening playgroup, and it gives me a chance to catch up on paperwork. Mrs. Patterson ran an after-hours childcare program for employees who needed to work late. Another Harrison Industries benefit that Maya still couldn't quite believe was real. James settled into the chair across from her desk, and Maya was struck by how different he looked in the evening light. Without the formal structure of business meetings and executive presentations, he seemed younger, more relaxed. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and there were slight lines of fatigue around his eyes that spoke to the long hours he regularly kept. Have you given any more thought to the director position? He asked. Maya set down her coffee and leaned back in her chair. I think about it constantly. But James, I have to ask, are you sure you're not just offering this to me because you feel guilty about your daughter? The question hung in the air between them, more direct than anything Maya had ever said to him. James's expression didn't change, but she saw something flicker in his eyes: surprise, maybe, or recognition. That's a fair question, he said finally. And the answer is complicated. Maya waited, sensing that he was choosing his words carefully. When I first saw you in that grocery store, yes, I thought about Emma, my Emma. How young you were, how desperate, how much you reminded me of myself during the worst period of my life. James stared out the window at the city lights. But that's not why I offered you this job. Then why? Because in the months since you've been here, you've proven that my instincts were right. You're not just good at this work, you're exceptional. You connect with people in ways that trained social workers with decades of experience can't match. You see solutions that others miss. You have a natural leadership ability that's rare at any age. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. I still make mistakes. Half the time I feel like I'm pretending to know what I'm doing. That's called imposter syndrome, and it affects almost everyone in leadership positions. The fact that you're self-aware enough to recognize your limitations actually makes you more qualified, not less. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sound the distant hum of traffic far below. Maya found herself studying James's face in the soft light, noting details she'd never allowed herself to observe before: the slight scar above his left eyebrow, the way his hair curled slightly at the temples, the laugh lines that suggested he'd once smiled more often than he did now. Can I ask you something personal? Maya said. Fair's fair, James replied with a slight smile. What happened to your wife? Emma's mother? James's expression darkened, and for a moment, Maya thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet she had to lean forward to hear him. She left 6 months after Emma was diagnosed. Said she couldn't handle watching our daughter die. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She left you alone with a sick child. Some people aren't built for that kind of stress, James said. But Maya could hear the old pain in his voice. The treatments were brutal, the prognosis was uncertain, and watching Emma suffer. He trailed off, shaking his head. I'm sorry, Maya said softly. I can't imagine going through that alone. The ironic thing is that Emma responded well to treatment for the first year. We actually thought she might beat it. She was going to school, playing with friends, living a relatively normal life. And then it came back, more aggressive than before. James fell silent, lost in memories that Maya couldn't begin to fathom. She thought about her own Emma, healthy and laughing downstairs in the playgroup, and felt a crushing wave of gratitude, mixed with sympathy for the man across from her. How long were you alone with her? 2 years, from age 5 to 7. Those were actually some of the best years of my life, despite everything. We became a team, you know. It was just the two of us against the world. Maya understood exactly what he meant. She thought about the bond she'd formed with her own Emma during their months of struggle, how adversity had created an intimacy that might not have existed otherwise. She sounds like she was an amazing little girl. She was. Brave, funny, incredibly smart. She used to say she was going to be a doctor when she grew up, so she could help other kids who were sick like her. James stood abruptly, walking to the window with his back to Maya. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid way he held himself when talking about painful memories. I'm sorry, Maya said. I shouldn't have brought it up. No, it's okay. I don't talk about her often enough. James turned back to face Maya, and she was surprised to see that his expression had softened rather than hardened. Actually, being around you and your Emma has been healing, in a way. Seeing a healthy, happy child, watching you navigate motherhood with such grace, it reminds me that life goes on. That good things can still happen. The admission created an intimacy between them that Maya wasn't sure how to navigate. She found herself standing, moving toward him almost without conscious thought. James, she said, then stopped, not sure what she'd intended to say. He was standing very close to her now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. For a moment, the air between them felt charged with possibility, with the recognition of mutual attraction that had been building for months beneath the surface of their professional relationship. Maya, he said, her name coming out like a question. She took a step closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. He was looking at her with an intensity that made her heart race, and she could see the internal struggle playing out across his features. This is a bad idea, he said quietly, but he didn't move away. Probably, Maya agreed, but she didn't step back either. They stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, balanced on the edge of a decision that would change everything between them. Maya found herself wondering what it would be like to kiss him, to feel his hands in her hair, to let herself be held by someone who understood loss and struggle and the fierce, protective love of a parent. The spell was broken by the sound of Maya's phone buzzing with a text message. They both stepped back simultaneously, the moment dissolving into awkward awareness of what had almost happened. Maya glanced at her phone and saw a message from Mrs. Patterson. Emma's getting fussy. It might be time to head home. I should go, Maya said, her voice slightly unsteady. Maya, wait. James caught her arm gently as she moved toward the door. What almost happened here? Nothing happened, Maya said quickly. Nothing at all. James studied her face for a moment, then nodded. You're right, Nothing happened. But Maya, I need you to know that my feelings about your work, about the director position, none of that has anything to do with anything else. I understand, Maya said, though she wasn't entirely sure she did. Do you? Because I need you to be completely comfortable here. This job, this opportunity, it's yours based on merit, not on anything personal between us. Maya looked into his eyes and saw sincerity there, along with something that might have been regret. I know that, James. I do. Good, he released her arm and stepped back, restoring the professional distance between them. Think about the director position. Take all the time you need, but don't let anything else influence your decision. Maya nodded and gathered her things quickly, desperate to escape the charged atmosphere of the office. As she rode the elevator down to collect Emma, her mind raced with confusion and possibilities. What had almost happened in her office changed everything and nothing. James had made it clear that their professional relationship would remain unchanged, that her career prospects didn't depend on anything personal between them. But the knowledge that the attraction she'd been fighting was mutual opened up a world of complications she wasn't sure she was ready to face. When she reached the child care center, Emma's face lit up at the sight of her, and Maya felt the familiar grounding that came from her daughter's unconditional love. Whatever confusion existed in her personal life, whatever complicated feelings she might have for her boss, her first priority would always be Emma's well-being. But as Maya gathered Emma's things and prepared to leave the building, she couldn't shake the image of James standing by the window, backlit by the city lights, looking like a man carrying the weight of old sorrows and new possibilities. The question was whether she was brave enough to explore those possibilities, or wise enough to leave them alone. The Harrison Industries annual charity gala was held in the ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel, a glittering affair that brought together the region's wealthiest philanthropists, political leaders, and business executives. Maya had never attended anything remotely like it, the kind of event she'd only seen in movies, where women wore gowns that cost more than most people's cars and men discussed million-dollar deals over champagne and caviar. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the straps of the navy blue dress she'd purchased specifically for the evening. It was the most expensive piece of clothing she'd ever owned, and she'd agonized over the purchase for weeks before finally deciding that attending the gala as the soon-to-be director of community outreach required looking the part. Emma sat on the bed behind her, playing with blocks while Mrs. Patterson, the evening babysitter, prepared her dinner in the kitchen. At 10 months old, Emma was crawling everywhere and pulling herself up on furniture, her personality becoming more distinct each day. She was a happy baby, social and curious, seemingly unaware that her life had been dramatically different just 6 months earlier. "You look beautiful, Mia," Mrs. Patterson said from the doorway. She was a grandmother in her 60s who had become like family to Maya and Emma over the past few months. "Thank you," Maya said, though she felt more nervous than beautiful. You sure you don't mind staying late? The gala doesn't end until midnight. Are you kidding? Emma and I are going to have a wonderful evening, aren't we, Princess?" Emma babbled in response, clapping her hands with delight. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Williams. "Car will pick you up at 6:30. You're going to do great tonight." Dr. Williams had been instrumental in preparing Maya for the gala, coaching her on the key donors she'd need to meet, the political figures who would be there, and the delicate art of fundraising among the wealthy. Maya would be giving a brief presentation about the scholarship program during the dinner portion of the evening, her first time speaking to such an influential audience. The black sedan that arrived to pick her up was another reminder of how far her life had traveled from those desperate nights in the grocery store. As the driver navigated through downtown traffic toward the hotel, Maya watched the city lights blur past the tinted windows and tried to calm her nerves. The hotel ballroom was a vision of elegant crystal chandeliers, White roses, table set with fine china and silver. Maya had arrived early to test the audiovisual equipment for her presentation, and she stood at the edge of the room watching as servers made final preparations and the first guests began to arrive. "You clean up nice," said a familiar voice behind her. Maya turned to find James approaching, and her breath caught in her throat. She'd seen him in expensive suits countless times, but tonight he wore a black tuxedo that emphasized his height and the breadth of his shoulders. His hair was perfectly styled, and he moved with the confident grace of someone completely comfortable in such elevated surroundings. "Thank you," Maya said, acutely aware of how he was looking at her, not with the careful professional distance he'd maintained since that evening in her office, but with open appreciation. "You look pretty impressive yourself." "This is your first Harrison Industries gala," James said, offering her his arm. "Let me introduce you to some people." What followed was a whirlwind of handshakes and small talk as James guided Maya through the growing crowd of guests. She met the mayor, 2 congressmen, the presidents of several major corporations, and more foundation directors than she could keep track of. Each introduction felt surreal. These were people she'd only seen on television or in newspaper photographs, and they were treating her as an equal, asking thoughtful questions about her work and expressing genuine interest in the scholarship program. "Maya Chen," said Margaret Silverton, the board member who had been so supportive during Maya's presentation. "I've been looking forward to seeing you again. I've been bragging about you to everyone I know." Margaret was accompanied by her husband, a distinguished-looking man in his 70s who owned one of the largest law firms in the state. "Patricia tells me you're considering our Maya for the director position," he said to James. "She's more than considering it," James replied smoothly. "Maya starts as director next month." Maya looked at him in surprise. She hadn't officially accepted the position yet, though she'd been leaning heavily toward saying yes. James caught her expression and gave her a slight wink that was somehow both playful and reassuring. "Congratulations," Margaret said warmly. "You're going to revolutionize that department." As the evening progressed, Maya found herself falling into the rhythm of the event. The key, she realized, was listening more than talking, asking thoughtful questions, and letting her genuine passion for the work speak for itself. By the time dinner was served, she felt confident and engaged rather than nervous and out of place. She was seated at the head table between James and Dr. Williams, with a clear view of the podium where she'd be speaking in less than an hour. The dinner conversation flowed around topics ranging from local politics to international markets, and Maya was surprised to find herself contributing meaningfully to discussions that would have intimidated her just months before. "Ladies and gentlemen," the evening's host announced as dessert was being served, "please welcome Maya Chen, who will tell us about Harrison Industries' innovative scholarship program for young parents." Maya's heart raced as she stood and walked to the podium, but once she began speaking, the familiar passion for her work took over. She told the stories of the scholarship recipients, shared the statistics about their success, and outlined the vision for expanding the program. But more importantly, she spoke about the transformative power of opportunity, about what it meant to have someone believe in your potential when you couldn't see it yourself. The audience was completely engaged, leaning forward as Maya described the ripple effects of education, how helping one young parent could change the trajectory of entire families for generations. When she finished, the applause was thunderous and sustained, with several people rising to their feet. As Maya returned to her seat, James leaned over to whisper in her ear, "That was extraordinary. You had them eating out of your hand." The warmth of his breath against her ear sent an unexpected shiver down Maya's spine, and she was acutely aware of his proximity, of the way his hand briefly touched her shoulder as she sat down. After dinner, the formal portion of the evening gave way to dancing and more casual networking. Maya found herself surrounded by potential donors, board members of other foundations, and political figures who wanted to discuss collaboration opportunities. The response to her presentation had been overwhelmingly positive, with several people making immediate pledges to support the scholarship program. "You're a natural at this," Dr. Williams said during a brief lull in the conversations. "I've been working these events for 15 years, and I've never seen a newcomer command a room like that. It doesn't feel like work when you're talking about something you believe in," Maya replied. "That's exactly what makes you so effective. Your authenticity is rare in this world." As the evening wound down, Maya found herself standing on the hotel's terrace, looking out over the city lights while most of the remaining guests mingled inside. The November air was crisp, and she'd stepped outside to clear her head after hours of intense social interaction. "Mind if I join you?" James appeared beside her, offering a glass of champagne. "Please," Maya said, accepting the drink. "I needed some air. It's beautiful out here." They stood in comfortable silence, the sounds of the party filtering through. The glass doors behind them. The city spread out below them, millions of lights twinkling like earthbound stars. "You were incredible tonight," James said finally. "Watching you work in that room, seeing how people responded to you, I knew I was right about your potential. But even I didn't expect you to take to this world so naturally." "It's still surreal," Maya admitted. 6 months ago, I was invisible. People looked right through me, or if they did see me, they saw a problem to be solved. Tonight, those same types of people were hanging on my every word." "That says something about the power of opportunity," James observed. "But it also says something about who you are at your core. The circumstances changed, but your intelligence, your compassion, your strength, those were always there." Maya turned to look at him, struck by the sincerity in his voice. "Thank you for all of it. For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself." "Maya," James said, and something in his tone made her pulse quicken. "I need to tell you something." Before she could respond, he'd moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes, and could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cool night air. "What we talked about in your office the other night about keeping things professional, about not letting personal feelings complicate our working relationship, I meant all of that." Maya nodded, though her heart was racing. "But I also need you to know that my feelings for you go far beyond professional respect. You're remarkable, Maya, not just as an employee, not just as a colleague, but as a woman. And I find myself thinking about you in ways that have nothing to do with work." The admission hung between them, fraught with possibility and complication. Maya felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that her next words would determine whether she stepped back to safety or leaped into the unknown. "James," she said softly, "You don't have to say anything," he interrupted. "I just needed you to know. Needed to be honest about what I'm feeling. What if I said I felt the same way?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James's expression intensified, and he moved even closer, so close that she could see the rise and fall of his chest and could feel the electricity crackling between them. "Then I would say we're both in trouble," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Good trouble or bad trouble? I honestly don't know." They stood there for a moment that stretched like an eternity, the weight of mutual attraction and professional complications creating a tension that was almost unbearable. Maya found herself remembering the way he'd looked at her during her presentation, the pride in his voice when he'd introduced her to other guests, the care he'd shown not just for her, but for Emma. "Maya," James said, reaching up to touch her face gently, "if we cross this line, there's no going back. Everything changes." "Maybe everything needs to change," Maya replied, surprising herself with her boldness. James searched her eyes for a long moment, as if trying to read her thoughts, to understand the full implications of what she was suggesting. Then slowly, deliberately, he leaned down and kissed her. It was a soft kiss at first, tentative and questioning, but when Maya responded by stepping closer and threading her fingers through his hair, it deepened into something hungry and urgent. She could taste champagne on his lips, could feel the controlled strength in his hands as they moved to her waist, pulling her against him. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Maya felt like the world had shifted on its axis. "We should go inside," James said, though he made no move to step away from her. "We should," Maya agreed, but she didn't move either. They kissed again, and this time Maya let herself get lost in the sensation, the warmth of his mouth, the way he held her like she was something precious, the feeling of being desired by a man who knew her story and wanted her anyway. When they finally did go back inside, the dynamic between them had fundamentally changed. The careful professional distance that had characterized their relationship for months was gone, replaced by something electric and dangerous and full of possibility. As James walked her to the car that would take her home, Maya's mind raced with questions and concerns. What did this mean for her job? For her relationship with Emma? For the carefully constructed new life she'd built? But underneath the worry was something she hadn't felt in a very long time: hope. Hope that maybe, despite all the complications and potential pitfalls, she'd found someone who could love both her and her daughter. Someone who understood what it meant to protect what mattered most. The car pulled away from the hotel, carrying Maya through the quiet city streets toward home. Tomorrow she would have to figure out how to navigate this new territory, how to balance her professional responsibilities with her personal feelings. Tonight, though, she allowed herself to savor the memory of James's kiss and the possibility that her fairy tale might have an even happier ending than she'd dared to imagine. Maya arrived at the office Monday morning with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety that made it difficult to concentrate on routine tasks. The weekend had passed in a haze of replaying Friday night's kiss, wondering what James was thinking, and trying to figure out how to act when she saw him again. Emma seemed to sense her mother's distraction during their morning routine, fussing more than usual as Maya prepared for work. It wasn't until they reached the building's daycare center that Emma settled, immediately brightening when she saw Carmen. "Buenos dias, mi amor," Carmen said, reaching for Emma with her usual warmth. Then she looked more closely at Maya. "You look tired, Mia. Is everything okay?" "Just a busy weekend," Maya replied, though that was far from the truth. She'd spent most of the weekend pacing her apartment, alternating between excitement about her feelings for James and terror about the potential consequences. "Well, you look beautiful anyway. That must have been some party Friday night." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. It was educational. Carmen's knowing smile suggested she suspected there's more to the story, but she didn't push. "Emma will be fine today. You can change the world." Maya took the elevator to the 32nd floor, her heart pounding as she wondered if she'd run into James in the hallway or elevator. But the morning passed without any sign of him, and by noon, Maya had begun to worry that he was avoiding her. Her phone buzzed with a text, just as she was heading to lunch. "Can you come to my office at 2 p.m.? We need to discuss the director transition." James. The formal tone of the message sent a chill through Maya. Was he having second thoughts about Friday night? About the job offer? Had she misread the entire situation? At exactly 2 o'clock, Maya knocked on James's office door, her palms sweating despite the building's air conditioning. "Come in," he called. James was sitting behind his desk when she entered, but he stood immediately, coming around to greet her with a slight smile that seemed carefully controlled. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, and Maya felt her pulse quicken despite her nervousness. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing toward the chairs by the window. "How was your weekend?" "Quiet," Maya replied, settling into the chair across from him. "Emma's starting to walk, so I spent most of it chasing her around the apartment." "She's growing up fast," James said, and Maya caught something wistful in his tone. "Maya, we need to talk about Friday night." Here it comes, Maya thought. The regret, the backtracking, the explanation about why getting involved would be a mistake. I've been thinking about what happened between us, James continued, and I need to be completely honest with you about something. Maya braced herself for rejection. I care about you, he said simply. More than I should. More than is probably wise given our professional relationship. And I care about Emma too. You've both become ... important to me. This wasn't what Maya had expected to hear, but I need to know that your feelings for me are genuine, and not just gratitude for the help I've given you. The question hit Maya like a physical blow. You think I'm interested in you because you gave me a job? I think you're a young woman who's been through tremendous hardship, and I'm a man in a position of power who helped you when you needed it most. That creates a dynamic that could be ... complicated. Maya stared at him, feeling hurt and anger rising in her chest. So you think I'm what, trying to seduce my way to job security? No, James said quickly. That's not what I think at all. But I needed to ask, because if we're going to explore this, whatever this is between us, I need to know that it's real. Maya stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. The city stretched out below them, and she thought about how different her view of the world had become since she'd first stood in this office 6 months ago. James, she said without turning around, do you remember what you told me the first day I was here, about believing in second chances? Of course. Well, maybe this is yours. Maya turned to face him, her expression serious. You helped me when I needed it most, yes. You gave me opportunities I never could have imagined. And I'm grateful for that, more grateful than I can ever express. She moved closer to his desk, her voice growing stronger. But gratitude doesn't explain why I think about you when I'm putting Emma to bed at night. It doesn't explain why I find myself looking forward to our late evening conversations, more than anything else in me day. And it certainly doesn't explain why kissing you Friday night felt like the most natural thing in the world. James's expression softened as he listened, the careful control slipping away to reveal something more vulnerable underneath. When I was struggling, when I was desperate and scared, I dreamed about stability, Maya continued. I dreamed about having enough money for food and rent and Emma's needs. But I never dreamed about finding someone who would look at me the way you do, like I'm worth something beyond what I can provide or what I need. She took another step closer, close enough to see the conflict playing out in his eyes. So yes, I'm grateful to you. But my feelings for you have nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the way you make me laugh during board meetings, the way you remember details about Emma's development, the way you've never once made me feel like charity. James stood slowly, moving around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her. Maya, I had to ask. I had to be sure, because you've been hurt before, Maya finished. Because your ex-wife left when things got difficult, and you're afraid I might be with you for the wrong reasons. The accuracy of her observation was clearly written on his face. How did you? Because I understand what it's like to have people judge your motives, to have them assume the worst about your character because of your circumstances. Maya reached up to touch his face gently. I've spent months having people look at me and see either a charity case or a potential gold digger. I never thought you'd be one of them. James caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. I'm sorry. You're right, and I'm sorry. It's just that what I feel for you, it scares me. Why? Because I never expected to feel this way about anyone again. After Emma died, after my marriage fell apart, I convinced myself that I was better alone, safer alone. His thumb traced across her knuckles. And then you walked into my life with your strength and your vulnerability and your beautiful daughter. And suddenly alone doesn't feel safe anymore. It just feels lonely. Maya felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. James, I'm scared too. I'm terrified of messing up the best thing that's ever happened to me and Emma. But I'm more terrified of not taking this chance. They stood there for a moment, hands clasped, both of them balanced on the edge of a decision that would change everything. If we do this, James said quietly, we have to be smart about it. The company has policies about relationships between supervisors and employees. There will be gossip, speculation, people who think you got the director job because we're involved. Can you handle that? Maya asked. The question is whether you can handle it. You're the one who'll bear the brunt of the judgment. Maya thought about Margaret Silverton's words at the gala, about the other foundation directors who had expressed interest in working with her, about the opportunities that were opening up because of her own merit and hard work. Let them talk, she said finally. I know why I got this job, and so do you. Anyone who thinks otherwise doesn't know either of us very well. James smiled then, the first genuinely relaxed expression she'd seen from him all day. You're remarkable, you know that? You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. He leaned down and kissed her forehead softly. Maya, I want to do this right. I want to take you to dinner, meet Emma properly, maybe take things slow. How slow are we talking? Maya asked with a slight smile. Slow enough that no one can accuse us of rushing into anything. Fast enough that I don't lose my mind from wanting to be near you. Maya laughed, feeling the tension of the past few days finally beginning to ease. That sounds like a reasonable compromise. James's phone buzzed with an incoming call, and he glanced at it with a frown. I need to take this. It's the mayor's office about the housing initiative. But Maya, can we have dinner tomorrow night? Somewhere quiet where we can talk. I'd like that, Maya said. But what about Emma? Bring her, James said without hesitation. If we're going to do this, she's part of the equation. I want to get to know her properly. Maya felt something warm and hopeful bloom in her chest. The fact that James wanted to include Emma, that he understood her daughter would always be her first priority, meant more to her than any romantic gesture could have. Tuesday night it is, she agreed. As Maya headed for the door, James called her name one more time. Maya? Thank you for being honest with me, about your feelings, about everything. Thank you for asking the hard questions, she replied, even when I didn't like them. Maya returned to her office with a lightness she hadn't felt in days. The conversation had been difficult, but it had also cleared the air between them. James's concerns were valid, the power dynamic between them was real, and there would inevitably be people who questioned her motives. But Maya had learned to trust her own judgment, and her judgment told her that what she felt for James was genuine and worth fighting for. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of emails and phone calls. But Maya found herself smiling as she worked. Tomorrow night, she will have dinner with James, not as his employee, not as a grateful charity case, but as a woman he cared about and wanted to know better. When she picked up Emma from daycare that evening, Carmen immediately noticed her improved mood. You're glowing, Mia, Carmen observed as Emma played happily on the floor nearby. Good news? Maybe, Maya said, unable to suppress her smile entirely. We'll see. Well, whatever it is, it looks good on you. Emma thinks so too. Look how happy she is when she sees you smile like that. Maya looked down at her daughter, who was indeed beaming up at her with pure joy, and felt a surge of determination. Emma deserved to see her mother happy, and deserved to grow up in a home filled with love and laughter rather than just survival. And struggle. Tomorrow night would be a test, not just of her feelings for James, but of whether they could build something real together, something that would benefit all three of them. Maya had learned not to expect fairy tale endings, but she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, her story might have one anyway. Maya changed her outfit 3 times before settling on a simple, black dress that was elegant but not overly formal, professional, but still feminine. She wanted to look nice for James while also being practical enough to chase after Emma if necessary. Her daughter, now 10 months old, was wearing a pale pink dress with tiny flowers that Maya had bought specifically for the occasion, the first purely frivolous purchase she'd made for Emma in months. James had suggested a small Italian restaurant in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of family-owned place with checked tablecloths and excellent food rather than pretentious atmosphere. Maya appreciated the choice. She was nervous enough without having to worry about Emma causing a scene in some upscale establishment. They arrived at Mama Rosa's at exactly 6 o'clock, and Maya spotted James immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, having clearly arrived early, and he stood when he saw them approaching. He was dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him. Dark jeans, a navy button-down shirt, no tie, and the relaxed attire made him seem more approachable, less intimidating. "Maya," he said, his smile warm and genuine, "and this must be Emma." Emma, who had been babbling happily in her career, suddenly went quiet when she saw James. She stared up at him with wide, serious eyes, as if she understood somehow that this meeting was important. "Emma, this is James," Maya said softly. "Can you say hi?" Emma continued to stare for a moment, then suddenly broke into a delighted grin and reached her arms toward James. Maya was shocked. Emma was usually shy with strangers, especially men. James asked, and when Maya nodded, he gently lifted Emma from her carrier. "Hello, beautiful girl. You're even prettier than your mommy told me." Emma giggled and immediately grabbed James's nose, making him laugh. The sound was rich and unguarded, and Maya realized she'd never heard him laugh like that before. Completely uninhibited, purely joyful. "She likes you," Maya observed, settling into her chair as James sat down with Emma on his lap. "The feeling is mutual," James said, bouncing Emma gently. "You're quite the charmer, aren't you, sweetheart?" Emma responded by patting his cheeks with her tiny hands and babbling what sounded like a very serious conversation in baby language. James nodded gravely as if he understood every word, occasionally responding with "really?" "And you don't say," which made Emma giggle even more. Watching them together, Maya felt something shift in her chest. She'd been so focused on her own feelings for James, so worried about the professional complications and the power dynamics, that she hadn't fully considered what it might mean for Emma to have a father figure in her life. But seeing her daughter's immediate comfort with James, watching the gentle way he interacted with her, Maya began to imagine possibilities she'd been afraid to consider. "She's going to need a high chair," James said, looking around the restaurant. "I brought her portable seat," Maya said, pulling the fabric booster from her bag. "It attaches to the chair." As James helped secure Emma's seat, the waitress approached their table, an older woman with kind eyes and a thick Italian accent. "Such a beautiful family," she said warmly. "First time here?" Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but before she could correct the assumption, James spoke up. "First time, yes. We've heard wonderful things about the food." The waitress beamed. "You will not be disappointed. And for the little principessa, we have fresh pasta with butter, very mild. She will love it." As the waitress walked away, Maya looked at James questioningly. "You didn't correct her." "About what?" James asked, though his slight smile suggested he knew exactly what she meant. "She assumed we were a family, and that bothered you?" Maya considered the question. Has it bothered her? The assumption should have made her uncomfortable, should have felt presumptuous and premature. Instead, it felt nice, natural, even. "No," she said finally, "it didn't bother me. But we've only been on one date. Well, this is our first actual date. Isn't it a little early for people to be making assumptions like that?" James reached across the table and took her hand. "Maya, I need to be honest with you about something. This isn't just dating for me. I'm not looking for something casual or temporary." Maya's heart stopped. "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for someone to build a life with. Someone who understands that love isn't just about romance, it's about partnership, about creating something bigger than either person could manage alone." He glanced down at Emma, who was contentedly playing with the crayon the waitress had brought her. I'm looking for someone who would let me be a father to her daughter, who would trust me to help raise an incredible little girl. Maya stared at him, overwhelmed by the directness of his words. James, that's a lot. Too much? He asked, concerned with flickering in his eyes. I don't know, Maya said honestly. 6 months ago, I would have said yes, it's way too much. I was so focused on just surviving that I couldn't imagine wanting anything beyond basic security. And now? Maya looked around the restaurant, taking in the warm lighting, the family sharing meals, the couples holding hands across checked tablecloths. Then she looked at James, who was watching her with patient attention, and at Emma, who had somehow managed to get crayon on her nose. Now I think maybe I've been selling myself short, Maya said. Maybe Emma and I deserve more than just survival. James squeezed her hand. You deserve everything, Maya. Both of you. Their conversation was interrupted by Emma dropping her crayon and beginning to fuss. James immediately reached over to pick her up, settling her on his lap again and distracting her with gentle bouncing motions. You're really good with her, Maya observed. I had practice, James said quietly. My Emma she was everything to me for 2 years. Being with children still feels natural. Maya could hear the old pain in his voice, but also something. New hope, maybe, or the possibility of healing. Does it hurt? She asked gently. Being around Emma, I mean. Does it remind you too much of what you lost? James considered the question carefully, continuing to bounce Emma gently as he thought. At first, yes. The first time I saw you with her in the grocery store, it was like a punch to the gut, but now. He looked down at Emma, who was studying, his face with intense concentration. Now it feels like a gift. Like maybe there's a reason I met you two when I did. The waitress returned with their food: chicken parmesan for James, eggplant parmesan for Maya, and a small bowl of buttered pasta for Emma. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily between them, covering everything from Emma's developmental milestones to James's plans for expanding the company's community programs. Maya was struck by how natural it felt, the three of them sharing a meal like they'd been doing it for years. Emma seemed completely comfortable with James, allowing him to help feed her pasta and clapping when he made silly faces at her. She's going to crash hard tonight, Maya said as Emma's eyelids began to droop toward the end of the meal. All this excitement has worn her out. Should we head out? James asked, signaling for the check. Probably. But James, this was perfect. Thank you. Thank you for trusting me with her, James replied, carefully lifting the sleepy Emma from her high chair. For letting me be part of this. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Maya felt a sense of rightness that she hadn't experienced in a very long time. The three of them walking out together, James carrying Emma while Maya gathered their things, felt like the most natural thing in the world. Where are you parked? James asked as they stepped into the cool evening air. I took the subway, Maya said. Emma likes looking out the windows. Let me drive you home, James offered. It's getting late, and it's not safe for you to be on public transportation alone with her at this hour. Maya started to protest that she'd been managing fine on her own for months, but then she looked at Emma, who was nearly asleep against James's shoulder, and realized she didn't want the evening to end yet. Okay, she said. Thank you. James's car was exactly what Maya would have expected, a sleek black sedan with leather seats, and more technology than she knew how to operate. But it also had something she hadn't expected, a brand new car seat installed in the back. James, Maya said, staring at the car seat. When did you? Yesterday, he admitted, looking slightly embarrassed. I wanted to make sure Emma would be safe if we went anywhere together. I had my assistant research the best models, highest safety ratings. Maya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. The car seat represented so much more than just safety equipment. It represented planning, intention, the hope that this wouldn't be their only time together as a family unit. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "Yes, I did," James replied firmly. "Maya, I meant what I said at dinner. I'm not looking for something casual. I'm looking for a future, and I hope that future includes both of you." As they drove through the quiet city streets toward Maya's apartment, Emma fell completely asleep in her new car seat. Maya found herself studying James's profile in the dashboard light, marveling at how much her life had changed in just a few short months. "James," she said as they pulled up in front of her building, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Of course. Are you sure you're ready for this? Really ready? Because Emma and we're a package deal. If you're in our lives, you're in for everything: sleepless nights when she's teething, tantrums when she's tired, endless laundry and baby food on your shirt, and no privacy, and all the chaos that comes with a toddler." James turned to face her, his expression serious. "Maya, I've been through the hardest thing a parent can go through. I've held my child while she was in pain. I've slept in hospital chairs for weeks at a time. I've made impossible decisions about treatment options and end-of-life care. After that, teething and tantrums sound like a blessing." Maya felt something in her chest crack open at his words, and she realized that she'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with this man who saw her daughter not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. "Okay," she whispered. Okay, let's do this. Let's see what happens when we stop being careful and start being brave." James smiled and leaned across the center console to kiss her gently. "I think what happens is we become a family." As Maya carefully transferred the sleeping Emma from her car seat to her carrier, she felt like she was holding her breath, afraid to disturb the perfect bubble of happiness that had settled around them. For the first time since her parents died, she could envision a future that was about more than just survival, a future filled with love and laughter, and the security of knowing that she and Emma were no longer alone in the world. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own complications and concerns. But tonight, Maya allowed herself to believe in happy endings and the possibility that sometimes, when you least expected it, the universe conspired to give you exactly what you needed. What did you think of this thrilling journey? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest tales. What kind of story would you like to hear next? Let me know in the comments. Your suggestions help inspire our future stories.